Good evening. This is Colleen again from Sherburne Public Library, and we're here with book talk number 4. Tonight we're going to be talking about other types of publications, and I have with me again Mike Tefft, who is a local author, and Brian McDowell, who is the publisher from Log Cabin Books. So tonight, like I said, other publications, other ways to publicize your, or is that the right word? Publish your work. I think we mentioned a little blogs, podcasting. I'll let you guys take it away.
Mike, you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. I often have people who are interested in publishing their work, and either a book deal has not presented itself, either from another publisher, or if it's something that I don't feel I have a strong audience for, or a strong market for, I'll often suggest to them that if they're really looking to get their self-expression out in the public, there are a lot of ways to do it that don't involve actually publishing a book. And a surprising number of people are interested in that. The first thing I always tell them is there are lots of great systems online for producing a free of charge blog that you can point people to and send people to. My personal favorite is WordPress. It's very user-friendly, but most of them are. And I suggest that anybody who has writings that they want to publish in some other way other than a printed or even an ebook form, that's a great route to go. It's especially a great route to go if you write poetry, because poetry books are very hard to sell. Everyone thinks they're wonderful poets, and they probably are, some of them. But poetry is a very subjective thing, and it has a very tempered audience. And you may not find a publisher who's really willing to take you on as a poet. But by the same token, you can start your own blog and point your friends to it and put up your poetry. I've seen lyricists do it for song lyrics. I've seen people who would otherwise be writing a novel do it by putting a chapter or an excerpt of a chapter up every week or every month to keep their audience interested. What a lot of people don't know about blogs is you can monetize blogs. You can actually charge a very small amount of money for people who follow your blog. And if they're going to pay, cents per visit, a lot of them will do it if they're, if you're really close to them or you have some, personal relationship with them. So you can be making a little bit of money from it if that's what you want. But if you just are interested in self-expression, a blog is a great way to go. Mike, have you had any experience doing that or any interest in doing that?
Well, I do have a blog that I update very infrequently. I happened to look the other day and realized the last update was October, so I've got to get on that. I will just add with the WordPress thing, there's like 2 flavors of WordPress. There's WordPress.com, which is the free version, but you can't sell anything on.
Right.
WordPress.org is basically the paid version.
Right.
It's not that bad. And you have you have more control over your whole environment, and you're allowed to sell things from there. So if you plan to monetize, you may want to look at WordPress.org versus WordPress.com. But I started with WordPress.com. And then when I realized, I want to sell, then I got it transferred over to WordPress.org. And it seems backwards because you think of .com is business and .org is nonprofit, and it's the other way around in this case.
Yeah, I was actually surprised by that too, because I first went to .org and then realized that wasn't really the right place to be. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. .org is a place where you can monetize. You can't do it on .com.
Yep.
But .com might be a good place to start, and then you could switch over.
Absolutely. And the interface and everything is still the same. So if you start out on .com, going to .org is, once you do the transfer, it's straightforward.
So you could just transfer your files basically
Yep.
over and, oh, that is interesting.
Some other authors have used online journals or newspapers or magazines and have excerpted their work by taking maybe a chapter at a time and putting it up if the magazine or journal is interested in publishing. And a lot of them are, because you have to remember the number one need of people who are running those online journals and magazines is content. So they're
True.
pretty open to new authors and new submissions because they need to fill space. So just like the old newspaper, the old print newspaper of old needed to fill space, the websites do too. So that's another good place to look if you want to put part of your work up. I don't know, Mike, if you've used your blog to actually draw people to buy your book. Do you put up excerpts, or you just put up other information about it that's kind of a teaser for the purchase of the hard copy book or the ebook?
I've done both. Before my first book came out, I actually set out like the first 5 chapters as individual chapters. I released them individually to get some interest in the book. This last time I did not do that, but I do try to use it to drive traffic to the book. I talk about what I'm doing, where the books are, where I am in the process. Sometimes it gets a little off that, but I talk about writing in the books and what I'm doing.
That's great. Do you get people asking questions and responding and chatting with you?
Not too much.
Well, obviously, if you tie something like that in, I don't know, is yours tied into your Facebook page?
You can get to it from my Facebook page, yes. Yeah.
You can actually set up with WordPress or any blog that when you post something on WordPress, it automatically is posted to your Facebook page.
Yeah.
And that'll help your main audience, your people
Yeah.
who've already liked or subscribed or followed your Facebook page to have access to that content.
And I've done that on Amazon and Goodreads as well. So that maybe not, I don't know if you can do it in Amazon, but you can do it with Goodreads. So all my blog posts go straight to my Goodreads page.
That's good. That's good. The question of how to do a podcast with written material is a little bit trickier, but it's interesting. You'd be surprised at how many people are interested in written content basically being read or recited or whatever through a podcast. People are always looking for audible.com files and things they could listen to when they're driving. So that's another possible way. I don't know, Mike, have you encountered authors who actually created podcasts?
Yeah, I know a couple that have done that. One person who she has a blog on writing, a podcast on writing. She started basically an audio drama where it was completely written for the podcast, and she just completed her first season last summer, and season 2's coming sometime this year.
That's great.
But that was a lot of work, because she had other voice actors, some sound effects, some music, but not outrageous, but there was real production values to it. So
sure.
It kind of became like a radio show, basically. And that's not uncommon. I know of several podcasts that are basically audio dramas where, it's either it can either be the author by themselves or a cast that get together and just basically do a radio drama, basically.
Alternatively, you can actually give the serial treatment to a podcast pretty easily. A lot of people were really hooked on Serial about 4 years ago?
Yeah, not too long.
And that's had several iterations, but I always thought it would be a great application for somebody who's writing about local history. because you could unravel, say, in my case, because I have an author who writes a lot about Peterborough and the Underground Railroad. You could unravel the story of, an abolitionist's work, and there always are some mysteries and some things that are maybe not apparent on the surface. And you could do a level or multi-part series on something that's local history that people would actually be pretty interested in if they're history buffs, and a lot of people are.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an audience for that.
Mm-hmm.
Is
But
there
the main
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, the main message that I have for authors, again, and Mike and I and you, Colleen, have been very encouraging of people who want to express themselves through writing. Um, Find a way for it to work for you, and don't take no for an answer, and don't walk away from your writing just because you didn't get the book deal
Right.
or the ebook deal. There are so many other ways to express yourself. And a surprising number of people are more interested in expressing themselves than they are in getting rich by writing. They just want to have an outlet to say
Right.
what they want to say. I
Yeah.
interrupted you, Colleen.
No, you're fine. I kind of think that that's why you should be writing anyway, is that you want to express yourself. I mean, and I think in the end, that's what's going to make you successful if that's where you want to go, because you have a passion for it. Anything you have a passion for, you're going to work harder at and do, and it'll find a way, is the way I look at it.
Exactly.
Going back to podcasts, what kind of cost is involved in something like that? Do you have any sense of that? I mean, obviously, if you're hiring actors and doing that kind of stuff, then could get pricey unless you just get your friends together and your actor theater friends.
Well, I mean, there are some upfront costs. I mean, to do podcasting, you really do need a semi-decent microphone.
Right.
The microphone we're using right now for all of us to talk on our laptops is probably not good enough for a podcast.
No.
Although a surprising number of them use exactly that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends how polished you want your podcast to be.
Right.
So, and you can find decent microphones for, I'll say around $100, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, but you can find, pretty decent quality mics at that level. You do need to pay for some place to host the podcast files. So especially if you want them to be available in any of the pod catching networks, things like Apple, Spotify, I think Google, all the big players that you could get your podcast from. So you do need someplace to host it, and that usually costs. So there is a little cost there, and that cost is also dependent on the number of downloads you get. So, the more downloads you get, the more it can cost you. So, I mean, but if you're just doing it for fun, I don't think you probably won't be paying tons of money for that.
Yeah, and just as we suggested that people look at a free service like WordPress.com, it's not the only one. When they start a blog, you can start a podcast for free by using YouTube, creating a YouTube channel, and uploading your files there, and seeing, and maybe pointing people to it to show some download history. And then you have a library that you can later transfer if you decide you're going to go public with it. You can also monetize YouTube. I mean, let's be honest. You can monetize YouTube, and they'll put ads up before and during maybe your podcast, but you can make money that way and actually call it a podcast, even though it's technically not. But you're right. When you start asking the services to include you, the ones for which you download apps for podcasts, number one, it could be a really good thing monetarily for you. I mean, you're not going to become a millionaire, but you'd be surprised how many people are looking for that content. And if they find yours and the description is something that's interesting to them, they'll download it, and then you're going to make some money that way. But to start with YouTube, and take it from there is maybe a good way for
Yeah.
someone to practice, get their act refined so they know what they're doing. Like you said, Mike, buy a decent microphone, maybe buy a decent webcam, which might
Yeah.
cost $100 or $200 or whatever, more if you're interested, but doesn't have to be more. And actually do a good job of lighting and everything to make it look more professional than maybe it even is. Like, for instance, Mike is not really on the bridge of the dirigible or something like that, but he sure looks like he is.
And I'm not really outside in the sunshine. So.
That's right.
We know it's not true because it's upstate New York and there is.
Right.
Yeah, it was very cold today. I took a walk and I thought it was November.
Yeah.
But there always are intermediate steps where you can get your bearings and gain a little confidence and get a local audience so that eventually when you turn it over, the podcast over to something, a legitimate host, then you're going to be set. You're going to be confident in what you're doing, that it'll be a good product.
Well, and I know audiobooks and, like you said, Audible is a big thing right now. And I know even at the library we have a lot of call for that. That's a whole nother thing. Getting your book recorded, having someone read it and record it. That's a whole nother step in the publishing.
Yeah, and if you're not using different voices for each character, I mean, if you are, a great resource, Colleen will love this, is to go to your local college, or I say high school, and go to the drama department and ask the students if they want to help you out. For a couple pizzas, you might get a lot out of them. It's a great experience for young actors, and their directors tend to love it too because it gives them a little bit more depth, and so that's a good way to get your stuff read by students who are notoriously cheap as employees, and a local college with a good fine arts department and theater department is a good second choice. College radio or high school radio, where you have people with performance voices, can be really helpful. So there are a lot of ways to go about getting someone to read your works if you're not going to be doing it yourself.
That's great. I know, Mike, you've toyed with that idea of recording your books at some point.
Yeah, I do want to do that. I just haven't bitten the bullet to do it yet. So hopefully in the near future I'll have all my books on audio. I keep hearing, I listen to a lot of podcasts about writing, and for the last year especially, even prior to the whole COVID thing, audio books has been the biggest growth part of the publishing industry. I mean, even the big publishers are starting to pay attention to the audiobook market now.
Absolutely. And there are so many great resources. YouTube is one, but there are several other resources on the web that if you search for royalty-free music or public use music, YouTube has a great collection of music you can use as background for free. You can download the files and the WAV files or MP3 or whatever, and just put them in the background as you're reading. You want to have something in the background, if not sound effects, which is, that's prairie home companion level stuff. There are lots of things that are free resources for you. You just have to look and spend a little time. You'll be amazed at how much you can do without paying a cent.
That's good. Good advice. What else? Are there other ways to express yourself with your writing, or are we?
Well, I think we're going to talk about the printing and ebook process next time, if I'm remembering right. So we don't need to get into that yet, but I think those are the main ways. Obviously, public performance or something like that can be handy. Maybe going on a local radio station that has a local arts hour or something, and reading and that kind of thing. That's a very esoteric audience and tends to be probably less eclectic than most people want. But it's something to consider.
And if poetry is your thing, look for poetry jams or amateur nights at cafes. Not that that's happening right now, but
Cyber cafes.
Yeah, everything's online now, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's out there for
But
sure.
even Facebook is another option besides YouTube. I mean, if you want to just share something with your friends, it doesn't have to even, if you're scared of going out on YouTube, you could do it on Facebook.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, the Hamilton Theater has a great series now where local musicians are performing for different businesses, with the ultimate goal being that those businesses will provide food or other materials to people working at the Hamilton Hospital. So
Yeah,
they're always looking for artists, and I'd love to see somebody break in with a poetry jam or something like that. It'd be refreshing. It'd be wonderful, and we're certainly heading in that kind of direction where people are expressing themselves more through all of the arts. I mean, Chris Cuomo from CNN did a TikTok dance with his daughter today. You just never know what's coming next. So
that's right. That's right. Yeah, and I think this time, this being at home and this restricted time where we can't gather has really pointed out that there are so many things we can do online. And it's obviously it's not the same thing, but I think we've opened up a whole new way of expressing ourselves and getting ourselves out there. Because I think even after we open back up, it's not going to go back exactly the way it was. And we'll see a lot more of this
yes, I think you're
online
right.
publishing and creating and performing, which is nice.
In a way, it's a step back because it's a step back to local content, which is nice.
Yeah.
Even though it's new technology,
Yeah.
it's people getting to know their friends and neighbors through a different way, through their artistic expression, and that's really cool.
Right. I know that we at the library have taken full advantage of it, and we have our videos and our content every week scheduled right down, and yeah, the girls that are doing it are having a really good time with it, and I think it gets the public out. The public can see them, people that they might be unfamiliar with, or now they'll know them when they come in the library again. So it's
And I
kind of
meant to highly recommend that if you're not already following that Facebook page or that website, the Sherburne Public Library has some great stuff going on, and a lot of resources for all kinds of readers and fans of literature. So, and the arts, crafts, and all kinds of stuff happening. So I highly recommend, if you haven't been to their page, check it out. Start with Facebook and then go to their webpage. There's a lot of content there, especially if your kids need to be kept busy with something.
yes. That was our hope. Thank you, Brian. Is there other things, anything else, or last words, or anything that we want to add before
I'm
we?
good.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, like Brian said, you can, with the expression, you can go as cheap or as expensive as you want. So
Right.
The main thing is to express yourself.
yes.
Absolutely. Well, wonderful. Well, thanks you guys for doing this again. We've got at least one more of this next week. And next week, I think we're talking about publishing agreements and maybe e-publishing, things like that. So we will see you next time. Thanks again, Brian.